Herman Dolce Jr. is a visionary founder of Bella Stone Enterprises and a leading financial coach in credit repair and business funding. Known for his straightforward approach, Herman is passionate about empowering clients and mentees to leverage credit as a wealth building tool. Bella Stone Enterprises help thousands of entrepreneurs secure funding they need to grow and scale their businesses, creating a community that spans over 5,000 members through his Bella Stone Academy. In addition to his work with clients, Herman's insights have been featured on platforms like Earn Your Leisure, TEDx, and Yahoo Finance, where he advocates for financial literacy and the importance of understanding credit. Drawing from his own experiences and an immigrant family background, he provides powerful mentorship that has inspired many to achieve financial independence. Whether it's one-on-one coaching or sharing strategies with large audiences, Herman's goal is to make financial literacy accessible and actionable, helping others break free from traditional limitations and building generational wealth. Herman, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Corey, thank you so much for having me on the platform. I truly appreciate it. It's an honor that I get to speak to your people.
Yeah, so folks, I'm super excited to have Herman on. I mean, anybody who's listened to our 320 something episodes know that we have a broad range of people on. I did a solo cast, which will come out probably a couple of months before this one will, on what's happening in the big international deals and the large, the Morgan Stanleys and the investment banks. And then, we talk about Main Street deals and smaller deals and funding deals. And, it's the whole spectrum of inorganic growth opportunities and different types of deals. And one of the things that I'm excited about here is the educational component that Herman brings and the access that he's providing. So I'm super excited to have him on. But before we get to all that, I'm going to take you back, Herman, to when you were a little kid growing up, maybe 10, 12 years old. What did you want to be? Because I'm guessing somebody who helps businesses raise capital and repair credit and, do financial literacy probably wasn't it back then, but you tell me.
Very, very different world. I am first generation Haitian. So to all my possible Caribbean listeners, there was only a couple of things we could have been when we grow up, doctor or a lawyer or engineer. So I chose to be a doctor and made it all the way to Temple University with that mindset. And then freshman year hit me and I had to take chemistry and A&P and biology my freshman year. And I had to tell my father that, yeah, this isn't for me. Ironically, though, I got all A's in those three classes my freshman year, but I was like, I don't want to do this for the next 8 to 10 years. It was not something I wanted to do. But I'm a Brooklyn kid, but Philly raised me.
Well, it's so interesting because I love how there's so many commonalities in different cultures because I grew up Jewish and I got to tell you, doctor, lawyer, engineer, maybe accountant, like it was, it was, it's the same thing in a lot of the Jewish community as well. Now I happen to go the lawyer route, but plenty of people who don't. I love that. One more question looking back. What was your first deal of any type? Could have been something, when you were younger, or maybe it was, in the lending space early on in your career. What comes to mind?
My first deal was when I turned 25. I bought my first real estate property. That was my very, very first deal. I bought it for $80,000, put 20 into it. And right around that time, I'm about to say a year, and everybody know what happened that year, 2008, the world came to an end. I didn't see it coming, but I ended up renting out that property for 3 to 4 years, and I ended up selling it for almost $200,000. So I made a profit, but during that time, I rented it out. So in any deal you guys make sure you have an entrance and an exit plan.
Yeah, love that. So what had you, one of the things I'm always interested in is the mindset of a deal maker. And, my listeners hear me talk about that a lot. And I always say that there's, people, it's discussed very, very often, the difference between an employee mindset and an entrepreneurial mindset, right? But what's less discussed is the difference between an entrepreneurial mindset of people who, there are plenty of people who grow companies organically, right? And then there's a deal maker's mindset, which is different than just having an entrepreneurial mindset. You obviously did a real estate deal early on. What had you become a deal maker? And now obviously what you do is you help people, get financing, and that's a deal. Any insights into what had you do that when a lot of the people don't, especially in your 20s?
Oh, well, my mindset was I wanted to get out of the rat race that I was in, right? So I had to learn a new skill, which was deal making. I never really thought about it like that because I had to negotiate that property because it was an absolute tear down. It was a row home in Philadelphia and it was a 3-1. So I had to put a lot of money into it, and the blueprint just wouldn't allow me to put a second bath in there. So I had to negotiate with the seller, like, hey, here's your options. Here where you're going through right now. Here's what I'm going through. Let's meet in the middle. As long as both sides win, then it's a good deal. When one side walks away that they lost, then it isn't a good deal. And I say that because from that deal, that owner actually had me sold me one of his second properties.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Mhm.
All right. So let's talk about this evolution as a deal maker, right? So we mentioned, you mentioned what you didn't want to do in terms of, once you got into those chemistry classes and, that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
which I tend
Uh,
to relate to. And then, you mentioned getting out of the rat race. You mentioned investing in real estate. And we know you now, work with companies on financing credit repair. Give us more about the journey of this evolving, deal maker here.
Right. So before I became a deal maker, I was a social worker for many years and spent like a couple of years in tech after that. So that was a great pivot, to be honest. And then the big pivot was to become not just an entrepreneur, but a businessman. And that journey started with the name of the company, Bella Sloan Enterprises. My wife of 11 wonderful years, she's going to give birth to our first daughter, Bella Sloan. Our second is Olivia Monroe. And we went to Italy for our baby moon. And my wife is a wonderful, frugal planner. And we went to Italy for 2 weeks. And I think the trip cost us maybe $3,000. She's that good. Right. But during that time, I realized something while I was there. I used all my vacation time to go on the trip. Right. Of course, because we only get 10 days off per year. And when I got back, I was telling my brother, Kevin, how disappointed I was because now that my baby was going to be born, I had no time to spend with my child. And my brother said something to me. He's like, unless you own your own, you'll never be free. Right. And that always stuck with me. And I was like, well, what am I going to start? A real estate company like everybody's doing on HGTV? But he's like, that credit thing that you do before it became so popular on Instagram and social media, he's like, you should charge people for that. And then he gave me a second line. And I was like, well, I don't want to charge people for that. That's really important. People having the credit because I was just helping people out. He's like, listen, they're going to pay somebody. They might as well pay you. And that was the birth of Bella Sloan Enterprises, where I started teaching people and or doing their credit for them. And then I went down the path of going down YouTube University because I wanted to learn my craft even more. And then I landed on business credit. And that was a great add-on to the business I was already doing. And then I started teaching it to people, and then things went crazy from there. And then we've done great business over the last 8 years.
I love it. I really want to delve into this because it's been a while since we've had somebody on that's really talked about this business credit side of things. And
Mhm.
some people have a misconception. Oh, like basically you go to a traditional bank, get a loan, and if you don't qualify for that, then you better be able to either bootstrap it on your own or
Mhm.
raise friends and family, equity money, right? And
Mhm.
many people don't have friends and family who have equity to equity, right? Got money. That's a limited group of of folks that have that access. So the ones who don't end up in this situation where they think, okay, I don't qualify for a bank loan, traditional bank loan, go to
Mhm.
Insta City, a Capital, whatever it is, right? And so I got to bootstrap this thing or go back and get a job, right? But there are so many different ways, right, to fund, companies. And, and that's what you focus on. So talk to us a little bit about what the various types of options are out there for, debt financing for various types of companies.
Well, to answer that question, I want to start with just a short story. My good mentor, Storm Lieber, he taught me something. Your job should be your first business partner.
Mm.
So after you pay off all your bills, you put a little money in the saving, that change that you have left over, that should be the first seed money to start your business. So if it's a t-shirt company, I have 500 bucks left. I'm gonna go buy $500 worth of t-shirt and I'm gonna sell it for 1,000. And then I'm gonna do that again. And then I'm gonna do that again. Because now you have a concept and a product and a brand that works. Your
Yep.
second business partner should be American Express, Chase, Wells Fargo, and US Bank, should be these banks. Because over the last 3, 4 rounds of you getting this money and making deposits into business checking accounts, because you're not commingling your money in your personal account, and along with your good credit, now you can go ask these banks for business credit or business lines of credit, because the business credit cards are a lot easier to get because if you then getting money from friends and family, because if you got good credit on the business side, the amounts are so much larger than the personal side. So you can walk out of a bank with 15, $25,000, 0% interest for up to a year. Now, just to give you some perspective of that, if you maxed out $25,000 on a business credit card, 0% interest, the monthly payment on that is only $250 a month. So you have a year of making that type of payment on that large amount of capital. And if I gave you 25,000 and you can't flip it more than 250 bucks a month in entrepreneurship and business really isn't your game. Yeah. So you have two business partners to get first yourself, then these banks with a proven concept. And it's like putting gasoline on a great mindset.
So let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, listen, I started my business this way, right?
Yeah.
No, I was, you'd think maybe some people would think I wouldn't have to do that, but it was 1991. It was a recession. I was 5, 6 years out of school. I made good money at big firms, but I had student loans. Plus, I'll admit it. Listen, I was somewhat typical for some communities, 20 something, where I was spending more money than I made, right?
Mhm.
Even though I was making decent money at big law firms. So I come to this place where I'm 30 years old. I don't want to work for somebody anymore. I don't have a book of business because when you work in big law, they discourage you from developing your own business. They want you available. I don't come from
Mhm.
connections where, I'm going to go to daddy or my family friend who has business for me.
Right.
And I hang out a shingle, and I pull cash advances down off credit cards, and at that time, they weren't even charging the upfront fee. It was like literally 0, percent for a while.
Right.
Played that game. Now, a lot of people, and I went to under $25,000 into debt, and it ended up going from making over $100,000 to making then $17,000 my first year, and I made it work after 4 years. I won't go too far down the road with my story. I've told it before, but the point is a lot of people told me I was crazy, and there are risks to that, right? I mean, if it turned out that I was unsuccessful and ended up with that debt, there are risks to that. So talk a little bit about, I mean, I agree with your statement, but it's, that you're not an entrepreneur if you can't turn that money. And it's what I do.
Right.
But let's talk about it. I mean, there are a lot of people who would advise against that because, that 0, percent interest rates can disappear after a year.
So let's talk about that. Those people that are saying that are most likely not millionaires. Those people that are not saying that probably still have a 9 to 5. Shout out to all my people who are not 9 to 5. I'm trying to do something extraordinary. I'm trying to be free. I'm trying to become a multimillionaire. And the way to do that is to take risk. And I mitigated those risks by telling people twice on this podcast. Number one, make sure you have an entrance and an exit plan. And number two, risk your own money first. Right. So now that you have a proven concept that, hey, this works, if I gave you 10,000, 15,000, you know exactly what to do with it. You're putting money into something that you know already worked. And the third thing that I didn't mention earlier, having a mentor, somebody who's done it before. Everybody that hasn't done it before is going to tell you it's too risky. Don't do it. Someone who has done it before, oh, yeah, that's easy because they've done it and they can give you some advice and some counsel on how to cut the line, mitigate your risk even more, and become more successful even quicker. And that's what I did.
I love those 3 points, and the middle one about, having done it with some of your own money and right, proving it out to some extent. If you think about it, it's interesting on a bigger level, if you look at what private equity firms do, right? I'm going to the big players, right?
Big players.
Their whole model is to figure out something that's working already. Like this is the best place for a PE firm to invest and for a owner of a firm to consider taking PE money, which is they're looking for somebody who has figured out already, has a successful business, and if they could put fuel on that fire, meaning, hey, I can put capital in that will allow us to scale and replicate quickly because they have a successful model. And what you're talking about, obviously, it's on a different phase of the business, a different scale, but it's the same exact concept. Saying, hey,
Yeah.
you proved out some success here, and we're confident that we can deploy this money effectively to replicate or build up on that or success today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that concept works in many different areas of our lives, not just money, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to many different things. And I've copied it and pasted it on this type of blueprint, and it's made me very successful. Like one of my mentees at Bellastone Academy, because it sounds big, oh, to buy a business. And I'm like, listen, there's a lot of baby boomers on the way out. The government has put in place SBA money for the next round of people coming up. And I know the example is beat to death, but you're going to buy a laundromat for $250,000, $500,000, right? The mom and pop that had it, I bet you it's coin operated. I bet you the machines are old. You're going to buy that business for 10% down. SBA is going to cover the rest. Where am I going to get the 10% down? Where am I going to get 25,000, 50,000? You're going to get that from SBA loan. That's where you're going to, a business credit card. Liquidate it, put the down payment, get the SBA loan. You're going to get in there and you're going to upgrade the business. You're going to turn it into a cashless business. You're going to get the key cards. You're going to upgrade the equipment. You're going to get somebody to do the wash and fold and add that part of the business that wasn't there before. You're going to get a business card so you can deliver the laundry when it's done, right? And in 2 to 3 years, guess what? You can flip that business for $1 million, right? So it can be done. And that's just on a smaller scale. And then you imagine doing that for the next 20, 30 years of your life, just buying and flipping businesses just like you would real estate.
Love that. And I want to go back to one other thing you said, because it's super important. I've given this example before, but and I can't like give up an opportunity to highlight it, which is
Okay.
this point that you said about the only people who are going to tell you that you can't do it are the ones basically who wouldn't do it themselves, right?
What it
I
is.
says all the time. People always give you, they're not bad people. They're well meaning, right? But they give you advice through their own filters. And if it's beyond their risk tolerance, they're going to tell you not to do it. Not because they
Right.
have any independent evaluation of whether you could be successful. It so comes from the fact that they would never take that risk, right?
Exactly.
And it's a
Mhm.
super important point. I've given the example where when I started my firm back in 1991 during a great recession when lawyers were getting laid off all over the place and I had no clients, pretty much everybody, family, friends, other lawyers that I knew would have told me I was crazy, right? Why are you doing this? This is crazy. You live in a six-figure job. And then a few years later, when we opened an office down on Wall Street, and I had a corner office with a view of the Statue of Liberty, and I had, this glass front conference room with the books in there. This was back in the days when people actually real estate and that meant something. People came to my a party that I threw, and almost to a person, every single one of those same people said, "Oh, I always knew you'd be successful," right? And they weren't like I'm sure they didn't even remember telling me that it was crazy and I shouldn't do it. And the
Mhm.
difference was when they could see the nice office. Right now, because if they put themselves in that position and knew that was gonna help
Right.
but sure, they would have done it, but when they couldn't see any of that and when I had no clients and there was all risk involved, that was the filter, so that's the ultimate example for me. Literally, I probably had 30, 40 people who had told me not to do it, who told me, "Oh, yeah, they always knew I'd be successful 3 years later when they saw the offer."
I have a tagline. It's called Audit Your Circle, right? And it leans towards what you just spoke about in regards to rest in peace. My father passed away 60 days ago. I remember when I first started my journey in entrepreneurship, he worked for Donald Trump's father. And I remember when I told him, hey, I want to start my own thing, maybe get into real estate or something. He was like, what do you think? He's like, what do you think? I'm Donald Trump. He's like, you don't have a rich father. How are you going to start? And I was looking for validation, of course, from my father, but I was looking for validation and advice from someone who's never done it. So when I had to audit my circle, my father was the first person I had to lay off, right? Out of the financial circle of my life where I was going to go. So I had to take advice from people who have been there or who have failed at it, because they'll give me some good advice too
Yes.
on where I wanted to go next. So sometimes those people that are closest to you might be the one that are hindering you to push you to that next level.
Yeah, it's a great point, and like you said, the key is you took your father out of your financial circle, doesn't like out of your family
Not
circle,
family circle, right, right.
mentor in other areas of your life.
In other areas of our life, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's great. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the other structures and types of businesses and clients, that you work with in terms of the creative financing opportunities that people use to start or expand businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. So after we have the credit repair cycle, then we have the funding cycle where we help people get business credit cards, business lines of credit, and business loans. And those are three different type of sectors and three different type of clients. So people that want business credit cards, if they got good personal credit, a good personal profile, their business is structured properly, we're getting them $50,000 to $150,000 with our eyes closed, 0% interest business credit cards. Now, those people later on, they fall into another cycle where if they're doing good with the business and they got taxes, they got revenue and bank statements, then we take them into the line of credit, the business loan place. So the first place, everybody can almost get into that lane. But lines of credit and loans for the businesses, if you got taxes revenue, then we're talking half a million, $1 million loans or lines of credit for these people. And those have been great clients that keep coming back to us for more capital. And then one day they outgrow me and I have to point them to my venture capitalist friends who got 10 million and above to give to them.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about why you started, because listen, you could easily just do the business where you help people find capital and you have whatever fee structure you do on that, right? And, et cetera. But you do a lot of education work as well. You have the academy, the motivation for that. And why do you do that? And is there a separate financial model, around that? Like, talk to us about that piece of it.
So 5 years ago, we started Bellastone Academy, and we meet every single Wednesday night. It's a subscription-based model. We charge $50 a month for it, very nominal. And the reason why we came up with it, Corey, is because I started to realize that everything that I was passionate about, I was the only one passionate about it, and no one really knew how this worked. And people were always asking for mentorship. Well, I know you help people fix their credit. Can you teach me how to do it myself? Or I know you fund people. Can you teach me how to fund people? And I see you're an entrepreneur slash business person. Can you teach me the ins and outs of the foundation? So me and my CEO, Damaris, we came up with Bellastone Academy so that we can help people do that. Because, Corey, as you know, the financial literacy is not taught in the schools in this country. So balancing a checkbook, taxes, insurance, leverage, EBITDA, things like that are just not spoken anywhere. So we wanted to create a platform for people to learn this because my clients are 25, 30, 40-year-old people who are telling me I'm trying to get them a business credit card, but they never had a personal credit card. So I couldn't get them funded. So there was a lot of brainwashing, unprogramming, and reprogramming that I had to do. And he's like, listen, let's just make one place for us to learn it. And it's grown into an amazing community of over 5,000 people. And we've also taken that and created a nonprofit called the Blueprint Foundation, where we actually go into schools, high schools and colleges, especially with these student athletes and this NIL money, where we're teaching them about financial literacy, getting themselves an LLC. Hey, don't have Gatorade pay you, have Gatorade pay your business, save on taxes and things like that, because we saw there was a need and a gap in that financial literacy area in this country.
I love it. In terms of the clients that move into that, that where they're bankable in terms of loans, right? And obviously, you said they need some financial track record and tax returns and et cetera. Traditionally that's been 3 years. I know that's not always the case, right? But traditional banks want to see 3 years of financials. What are you seeing in terms of at what stage do companies get to that point? What kind of lenders are you talking about? Are there ones that are more, that you need a shorter track history or that are more open to, businesses at various stages?
So banks are very amenable to all stages. So someone who just started out with their business, that LLC, that piece of paper is a day old or whether it's 2 years old. If you have good credit, because you're going to personally guarantee it. If you got good credit, they're going to give you these business credit cards. That's going to happen. Now, when it comes to business lines of credit, they like for your business to at least be 2 years old, have good credit, and they're going to look at 90-day bank statements to see how your business is doing. When you go into business loans, that's when they want more. That's when they want a year or two of taxes. They want 6 months of bank statements, and they still want you to have good credit. And at that point, sometimes they even ask us to check the credit of your business itself, what your paydex score is, where it goes from 0 to 100, and they look for businesses that are over 80. Because at that point, when you have years of revenue, they know you've taken the time to build up your business credit, also taxes and profit and loss sheets, and because those loans are a lot bigger. And you have to have the capital to sustain that loan because, a loan versus a business credit card, I can get a $50,000 business credit card, but I don't swipe it. So I don't have to worry about a debt per se. But the moment you get a $50,000 loan, you have 30 days to ensure that you come up with that money.
Yeah, good stuff. In terms of the lenders, you work with a bunch of different lenders, I assume, and you play I don't know if broker is the right word, but right, you're an intermediary, right?
Exactly.
That helps find the funding sources, connect, and walk people through the process.
Exactly. I like to say that I sell money. So because I have good relationships, and I tell people build relationships with lenders, bankers. I call them my secondary business partner. My job is my first business partner, and my second business partner were these banks. And I have great relationships with them, and I send them great leads. And I tell them, and I teach my clients how to speak to the banks, what the banks are looking for. So you present yourself like to the underwriter as someone who is competent, because your competency, how you present yourself, along with what your credit and financials did determine how much money you're going to be able to get to with these banks. And, they have some baselines that every bank have when it comes to business credit cards. No matter whether it's American Express or your local credit union that does business funding, there's some minimum baselines that I speak to that help people get the funding and capital that they need.
And so beyond the financial criteria, you mentioned a little bit working with these folks on how to present themselves, things like that. Especially when you're talking about, let's call them Main Street businesses, low and middle market businesses, and earlier stage entrepreneurs. A lot of times those folks are, Michael Gerber would call them technicians or whatever. That's not a bad there. It's just like they do what they do. They're a computer programmer. They're a graphic designer. They're a whatever it is, right? Even a lawyer, an engineer, and doctor, right? We're all like we're, they have a skill or experience in a particular thing that they're good at.
Correct.
Not only
Mhm.
have they not been trained in financial literacy generally, like most of us haven't, but many of them haven't had any exposure to actually running a business, right? Or, obviously if they're at the stage if they've been running it for a while, but they certainly, a lot of them, whatever it is, they're doing a service and getting paid for it, right? They don't have,
Right.
they may not even have real financial statements, early on, right? They let the
Right.
bank balance, right? As it comes in. So what is it? And, how much of this do you do on the business side? I'm sure, on the academy side, you train some of this. Like, what is it, where are these companies coming into and what are the kind of things that you need to work with them on to get them prepared to properly, present themselves and have the right things in place for these various types of lenders?
Where these leads that are coming from is the wonderful internet, social media, whether it's YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter. So people find me. I come on amazing podcasts like yours, and then the leads come in, and then I have an amazing team that's these potential clients. Ask them the questions. Hey, how old is your business? What is your business doing? Are you a startup? Do you have financials? What is your credit score? And we even have something where we teach people, which is called credit optimization, where we're like, okay, well, pay down your personal credit card debt to below 30%. If you get it below 10, it helps us out even more. Let's get rid of as many inquiries as possible, because the less inquiries you have, you don't look eager to look for money. Banks like to give money to people who doesn't seem like they need it. So we prepare them and we train them up that way, make sure their documents are in order in regards to your LLC is proper. It's a good business name, business address, business phone number, business website, business email. So it's not bellasone at Gmail. It's info at bellasoneenterprises.com, right? I don't have my home address on my LLC. I have a real business address or a virtual address or a registered agent, not my home address. Those little things matter when we gonna present ourselves to a bank, because you look legitimate. If you took those time to do those little things with your pennies to take care of, it goes a long way in getting you prepared for getting some capital, especially as a startup.
Yeah, totally. Let's talk about some, mistakes or things that didn't work out. And I mean, no matter how great your advice is to your clients and no matter whatever, first of all, not every client follows advice from any advisor, professional, lawyer. Trust me, we have that as well. And also, listen, even if they did follow good advice, I mean, markets change.
Exactly.
Remember, I mean, you talked about 2008. I mean, I had a couple of real estate investment funds. We made some very good investments, but there were people way smarter and bigger than me in the real estate investment space who got, crushed even harder than we did, just because of the economy. So talk to me a little bit about, some of the places where people did, go wrong and what are some of the biggest reasons why people fail at, these kind of businesses or misusing capital, whatever it is.
Where do we start? First example is, as I said in the beginning, not having an exit plan. I don't prepare to fail, but I prepare to fail, right? So in my first real estate deal that I spoke of, I didn't lose my shirt because the exit plan was refinancing out of the deal or putting renters into place. And because I used my own capital and I didn't raise capital from a bunch of people, I was able to withstand the storm. As long as I was able to maintain those minimum payments, then I was able to sustain myself. Number two, spoke about that a little bit earlier, having a mentor that helped protect me and gave me some advice before I signed the deal. Because in real estate, you make money at the closing table even before the deal is done, like at the entrance. So there was a great cushion for me to make money. I could have made a lot more, but because of the circumstance of the market and the rebound 2 years later, I made a lot less, but still I didn't lose my shirt doing it. So having a mentor is super important. I got to stress the mentor thing. I remember my second deal I was looking at was on Temple University campus, 3-story building, totally gutted, but it was framed up, had a sprinkler system in it. Called up my mentor, and his time is valuable. I was like, hey, I got $400 for you if you show up for 30 minutes. Of course, he popped up. But out of respect, he didn't take the 400. He was like, I'm glad you made the offer. So he walked in the house, the building. I promise you, Corey, 60 seconds, it's a bad deal. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, it's framed up. The properties for going is on Temple University campus. It's a triplex, two bedrooms, two baths, each floor, right, bro? And it's framed up. He's like, and it was going for 100 ARV, 400 grand. I was like, how can this be a bad deal? He was like, well, the framing is done wrong. And sorry to everybody who's listening to me on the podcast, but the 2x4s were supposed to be flat on the ball, but they installed them wrong. They installed them sideways, and that was the entire building. I don't know how somebody could be so inept. He was like, you have to rip out this entire thing and then put it back up. And of course, the sprinkler system was about 30, 40 grand to put in, would have to be redone again. He was like, this is your second deal. You can't do this deal. You're going to mess up. And so he said, just leave it alone. So I saved myself 18 months and maybe $200,000 by having a mentor give me some advice.
So I want to dig into this mentor thing because, it's become much more popular to talk about people having a mentor. But I guess I'll put my assertion. I think most people go about it wrong. And I certainly, I get approached. I get LinkedIn, messages, saying, I'd love you to mentor me. Right? Like, what is your experience in terms, and since this is a big thing of yours, I'm sure in the academy, this is, something you can talk to people and like, how does somebody go about getting a mentor right? And why do people mentor? And I know that somebody's just going to coldly ask me who I never met to be their mentor. So me saying yes are not going to be very high.
Are not good. So how do you get a mentor? How I got my mentor, the different mentors that I have. I'll get to that in a second. But my first mentors were on YouTube and on Instagram,
Yeah.
just watching,
Yeah.
right? Watching, learning, taking notes because that information is free.
Yeah.
And I'm able to use that free information to go execute to see if it even works. And if it does work, I'm like, oh, okay, this is great. Now that it worked and I made some money or something positive came from it, it allowed me to be in different rooms. Now I can afford to go to that conference. It's $500 or $1,000 with like-minded people like me in that room. Now, no one's just going to say, no, it can't be done. It's like-minded people. And then I learned something from that room in being there for $500 to $1,000. And now I'm up 10 grand, 20 grand. And I'm just going through the levels of free game, free entrepreneurship, being in a room of like-minded people, shaking hands, kissing babies. And my first mentor, I was able to serve his community because I helped sell money. And he had a real estate community. And I was like, hey, would you like for me to come teach for free what I know about? Because you're showing people how to get real estate. I'll show them how to get money. I'd love to come and teach for free. And it was clearly a breath of fresh air because someone is always asking him for something. But even my first line when I do in networking, I'm like, well, my name is Herman Dolce, Bellastone Enterprises. I help raise capital for my clients. How can I serve you? Right. And then the act of servitude, the act of helping really gets me into the rooms of people. Cause once you serve, they'll love to help you back. So that was my first real estate mentor because we kept in touch and I was of service to him and we're still in touch to this day. And he even still goes me to this day because I got a couple of triplexes and duplexes. And he was like, when are you going to sell all that crap and get yourself some commercial real estate and get yourself 50 doors, 100 doors? You still playing in those small multi-units? So he continues to put a battery in my back to elevate myself.
I love it. Listen, there's so much that's so powerful in what you said, because inherent in what you said about sort of working your way up, right? First mentor, two, whatever, is the conversation of patience. And people don't get that you can have urgency and patience at the same time. In other words, like, I think, the smartest people have clear intention and are always going to move forward. They're not like just sitting around, right? But they understand that there's a evolution, right? And what you didn't do, and this is what happens to a lot of folks, is that they try to skip steps, right? And they go, they go straight to and then what happens with a mentor, and I look at this is like, I don't want to mentor somebody who's not putting in the work, right?
Exactly.
If they're looking for the hack or the, whatever, I'm not saying hack in the way of being like the hacks that are smart, whatever. But I'm talking about like skipping steps. That's not somebody that most mentors want to mentor because
My mentor, yeah.
they're not willing to do the work. So it's that combination of patience and being smart, but still being very intentional and having some urgency to keep learning, but knowing that there's an evolution. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. And then being of service, right? And unfortunately, like anything else in this world, great concepts become like a lot of people fake wanting to be of service, right? These days, look at these messages, how can I serve you? But what they're talking about is they want to serve me by selling me, or my clients their product. No. That's the way you're going to serve me. Like that's got to come later, right? So yeah, so I love, you talking about a real service mentality, your example of going, and speaking for free, right? Like,
Yeah.
and yes, does that give you exposure? Could that promote you? Because obviously, but that's not the way you pitch it. You saw a need that would serve this mentor, what became your mentor's community, right? And that was the driving force that served him and allowed him to bring more value to his audience. And yes, if part of the result of that is you're going to get some business out of it, that's great.
Absolutely. And that would work great. And I use that same model with all of the mentors I have in real estate, my mentor in marriage, my mentor in systems and things like that. And it's worked very well for me. And I'm going to continue to do it. If your mentor does not have a mentor, you need to get another mentor.
I love it. I love it. It's, oh boy, such great advice. So I want to open it up just a little bit because we're coming towards the end here. And before I ask you my final two questions, talk about anything else that I haven't asked you about, or, are there any trends going on, or, evolutions of what you see coming about in the credit markets and the entrepreneurial markets and the funding markets, and anything you think would be valuable?
Everything is in cycles. I think we're back into the cycle where everything is tightening up. The banks are asking for more paperwork, more documentation before they give out this money. Before, they were just letting it ride. And I've seen it up and down several times. We have a new administration coming out in January. And in the first 90 to 100 days, we'll see how the banks react to it. I think because we have a president that's going to be pro-Brit, pro-business, I think it'll be a lot easier to get capital. But I also want people to prepare for the different shift in where business as a whole is going in regards to there's different things out there that we are afraid of, such as crypto, such as AI. And you can trip and fall under the algorithm where you are under the algorithm and the algorithm is using you versus you being in front of these new things where you can use them in the growth of your business. And I think this is what everybody within this podcast should really be paying attention to in the next 5 years. I use AI in my business every single day, every single day.
I love it. Listen, I've said this to folks a lot. You can go back to, if you study history and how it affects business, it's clear. With every change, whether that's a technological change, demographic change, a social change, political change, whatever it is, right? With every change, and especially if you're talking about technology, like things like AI, right? There's always the companies that are way out in front, early adopters, right? And frankly, some of them get slaughtered because they're a little, because they're too early, right? But then there are ones that sort of in the forefront. They may not be, the first, but they're proactive and they're on it. And then the ones that, sort of sit back and wait a little while and maybe, it's not too late. They do catch up. And then there are the ones that fall behind, right? And
Right.
this in every single business. And there's been evolutions where, the ones that fall behind end up going out of business. So certainly, listen, depending on how many years you have left or whatever, some of those businesses sort of ride out the tail and, but they certainly don't exit, for any of the enterprise value. So, and being on top of, the curve, and listen, you got to figure out what is actually going to have traction. But I remember back in, I guess, let's see, in the 90s, coming into 2000, before the dot-com bust, we had clients that were just moving online, right? In these, fields. And they were, venture capital firms, PE firms that weren't investing in the internet. Like,
Wow.
like we're not, like we don't invest in the internet. We don't know what this thing is. We don't know if it's going to be around, whatever, right? And we ended up, it was one deal, I won't tell all the details. I probably told it years ago, but one deal where we were able to take out a venture capital firm at 10 cents on the dollar because my client was moving to an internet model and they didn't invest in internet. They didn't believe in the new model. They figured the company was going to go out of business, and they ended up going online and essentially sold the company twice. They sold it once. The Central Newspapers got an equity piece in Central Newspapers. Central Newspapers sold it to what became realestate.com. And, my guy got 2 bites of the apple, and the VC firm ended up getting, taken out at 10 cents on the dollar because they weren't investing in internet, right? So it's always interesting how these patterns emerge and how, you're right. Like it's, you got to pay attention to this stuff. Listen, AI is not going away.
It's not going away. Listen, Amazon became Amazon because Jeff Bezos understood what the internet was going to be.
That's right.
He was ahead of the algorithm. And when Amazon, I don't know if everybody, all the listeners know, like they weren't making money for at least a decade. But every year he would write a letter to his investors, hold on. And he was a visionary. So definitely you guys need to be a visionary in your business, see what's coming up next. Because even in my business right now, AI does a lot of the credit repair. In my business right now, AI is the one that makes decisions on these loan applications. So you having some basic minimums, requirements, the AI can read those things and I help you get more money than you would have on your own because I know what these algorithms are reading and what they're looking for.
Love that. Love that. Herman, if people want to find out more about you, your business, the academy, all that kind of stuff, where should they go?
Absolutely. So they can reach out at easiest place to reach us is email info at Bella Sloan, SLOAN enterprise.com, or they can follow me on my social media platform, Haitian, HAITIAN underscore CEO. So Haitian underscore CEO on TikTok and on Instagram. And the best place people love to find me is on YouTube, where I have a lot of long form content, hour-long videos, just teaching everybody everything I know for free. And you can find me at Bella Sloan Enterprises on YouTube. We would love to be of service.
So, folks, moving it back to what Herman said earlier, that's your first mentor level. Go watch his videos on YouTube.
Go watch my videos. Yep. And Instagram. It's all there for you.
From a guy who really knows what he's doing in this
Yeah.
space. So, take his advice. Herman, my final question on the podcast is always about my highest value in life, which is freedom. And you mentioned it very early in our podcast, talking about, people only not being free until they own their own business. But for me, freedom means everything from freedom around the world for people from oppression to why I'm an entrepreneur and why I haven't had a boss for decades. What is our to you, and how does it impact your life and business?
Freedom to me is being able to, and I'll connect that story back to when my wife got pregnant. And you said it just now, to being able to do whatever I want, whenever I want. And my true freedom is, like, I just came from a 4-day stint in Art Basel in Miami. I wasn't near my daughters, but as soon as I got home, I was able to spend that time with them the last 2 days. Like, as soon as I'm done with this podcast, my daughter already asked me, "We're still going on our walk, Daddy?" Yes, we're going on our walk. And being able to do that whenever, however, being able to take my family to see different parts of the world, that is absolutely true freedom to me. And the last part of it, not to be morbid, again, I told you my father just passed away, but we did hospice in my house. And I was able to do that and pay for it and pay for the nursing care. And, my dad was comfortable his last years. And then that to me is absolute freedom, being able to provide for my family in just a special way that includes time.
Oh, that's beautiful, coming out of a very challenging situation. I lost my dad, 9 years ago now, and he was in hospice care as well. So I relate. And yeah, what a beautiful piece of freedom that is, right? To be able to spend time. Yeah.
Indeed.
Herman Dolce, thank you for being such a great guest on the DealQuest podcast.
Corey, thank you for having me. This was a great conversation. It was good to unload just a little bit and talk about my favorite topic. It was an absolute honor.